is Antonio Costa. I come from Porto Polytechnic School of Engineering. We adopted in the informatics engineering CDIO during the Bologna transition in 2006. So we have almost 5 years of running an informatics engineering program in CDIO. So we, in the beginning of this year, we delivered the documentation for the National Compulsory Accreditation and for the EURACE certification, quality seal. And we are waiting for the results. We think by the end of this year we'll know about it. But we have very positive expectations, of course. Thank you.
Rick, you want to?
I'm Rick Sellens from Queen's University of Canada. I'm in the Mechanical Materials Engineering Department. And we were doing a lot of CDIO-like things at the same time that we became aware of CDIO in the early parts of this century. And as a result, we saw a complementary approach and grabbed onto CDIO as part of the ammunition that we were using with our administration to advance our goals. And that's one of the ways I see accreditation as well. It's something I'm stuck with. I will use it to our best advantage to forward the real goals of the program, which are to get more students doing more useful stuff so they can go out and have a positive impact on the built environment and practical problems. That's the way I see our mission.
I'm Peter Gray from the United States Naval Academy, and I've been sort of pushing the whole notion of the possibility of certification. My presentation earlier today was on CDIO and quality assurance, but I actually agree with Peter Goodhue to a great extent that the entire process is totally overblown. It wastes lots of resources, and it'd be better if we did something else. One of the things I like about CDIO is that it really makes the point that if you're going to do any of this, you should do it for your own purposes. It's a waste of time and energy and everything else if you're doing it for somebody else's purposes. So in fact, at the Naval Academy, we see accreditation as simply part of a whole stream of self-evaluation that goes on constantly. And we're trying to get to the point where, like our 5-year accreditation review that we've just done in the last couple of weeks, and then our 10-year accreditation with Middle States, which is our governmental, so to speak, agency, as well as our ABET accreditation, becomes part of a whole process of self-examination. And so that it doesn't take the kinds of resources, it actually facilitates our continuous improvement. So I agree with you as the fundamental criticism, and so we've tried to manage that to lessen some of those negatives.
Thanks, Peter. Unexpected support there. Let me just say where I'm coming from. At Liverpool, we, very much like Rick said, we decided, David actually come to that, we decided we had to change how we were doing engineering education. And we decided that before I became aware of CDIO, in the early years of the century. And I was head of school at the time. And I used CDIO, A, to learn an awful lot about what to do and what not to do, and B, as a weapon to deal with my senior management and persuade them that this was a good idea. And I think it was successful in both cases. Now, as it happens, I was, of course, arguing against accreditation. Our engineering programs across civil, mechanical, aerospace, materials, manufacturing, engineering are accredited, many of them by 2 bodies. So, we are actually fully accredited. But I'm very much aware of the distracting effort it takes, where we could be doing something more useful to our students, frankly.
Thank you. So I'm from Telecom Bretagne. So, we are okay. We are a graduate engineering school in the field of telecommunications, and we are interested in CDIO because it helps us in fulfilling the accreditation requirements from CTI. CTI is our accreditation body in France, and it pushes a lot to develop competencies in the engineering education. But for French people, it is not so easy, and I think CDIO helped us a lot in doing it, because it is not only the syllabus, but also the full framework for competencies. And actually speaking, our program already was had some similarities with CDIO. But now we want to push it more. Well, we want, for instance, to map CDIO with CTI requirement, and I think it is a good way to for the next accreditation, which is in 2013. So, okay.
Questions from the floor.
Okay, folks, questions from the floor. Any issues that are troubling you?
Are you in your various institutions some resistance to change with respect to CDIO standards? So for a teacher, for example, or just an instructor and so on. So was it so easy to push on CDIO, the 12 standards at what time? Or do you propose the standard 2 and then a little more on the 4th 3 years after?
What we found is that it's variable. There are circumstances that facilitate CDIO change in general. I mean, CDIO is basically a change management process. You kind of look, you do a self-evaluation, decide on your strengths and weaknesses, you develop some plans to move forward. In fact, each one of the standards has a rubric that goes with it that goes from kind of, we're just aware of the need to we're actually implementing this particular standard and making improvements. What we've found is that with the change of personalities in a department, for example, or program or course, you can actually backslide. And so what we found from both accreditation as well as CDIO is it gives us a way to re-energize and get the momentum back. So no, it was not easy at all, and nor is it easy to sustain over time. But with the structure of CDIO and the rubrics in particular, it kind of helps you to refocus your efforts to get some movement forward.
Could I just add to that? I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, the thing you're hinting at is, of course, that it's very difficult to carry all the faculty in your department or school with you. And I think nobody claims to have carried everybody with them. I've never heard anyone make that claim. You need to carry initially 30% and eventually 50 or 60% with you, or you can't do it. And that's what Peter was talking about sustainability. You have to persuade people that this is a good thing. But we did a survey quite independently of my own school at Liverpool, and I was pleasantly surprised. We've been through this process, met a lot of internal resistance within the School of Engineering, a lot of conservatives who really don't want to change and so on. But then the university, quite separate from us, did a survey of all academic staff, and among the questions was one about attitudes to change. And suddenly the engineering faculty were voted in the whole university were the most positive about change. And I thought that was really quite an indicator. Maybe because they've been subjected to it, we've been forcing them to change. But instead of giving a big no vote because of what they've been subjected to, they actually gave the biggest yes vote in the university in favour of change. I thought that was very encouraging.
I'll just add a comment that we had quite a lot of resistance from some staff until we got such a positive result out of the accreditation visit, and that broke down some resistance. And that's created a momentum for sustaining CDIO, because people know that there'll be another accreditation visit in 3 years' time, in 2014. And we now have an expectation that we're going to be, a top-notch school with top-notch programs and top-notch activities, and this is the way to sustain it.
Another way to keep things moving in terms of the change is to approach people with opportunities rather than requirements. So one of the things we're in the process of instituting is a change in the way we do design activities at the second year level. And with only a relatively small resource injection, we've managed to convince some of the reluctant departments that we're actually doing them a favor rather than imposing a requirement on them. And it's very much a matter of perception rather than actual fact. You have to create the positive environment, and then people will tend to move forward, and you're still left with 30 to 60% of them who aren't moving with you, but you get enough momentum, you can move the overall objectives forward. And speaking of moving forward, I'd like to remind you all that we do have the poster teaser session coming up, which I am the host of, and I must now depart to go make sure it starts promptly on time, almost on time, at 5:05.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Another question?
Yes, now as we all are for favor in CDIO, and that has been a change on the curricula and the thinking, what will be the next step? What comes after CDIO?
Well, it's basically CDIO is CDIO is a change management effort. So if you get all fives on every single standard, then you go straight to heaven, right? But probably that's not the case yet. So we know, for example, teacher development, instructor development, either in the CDIO skills or in general teaching, is one of the ones that most institutions lag behind. So everyone's going to have a somewhat different profile, and that profile is going to suggest challenges for the future.
So there's nothing after CDIO.
But continuous improvement.
Well, there is. We started CDIO 1.0 and there's now CDIO 2.0 because the world changes and everything changes all the time. CDIO itself has to adapt and apply its own principles to itself. And if you're the best, that implies there's no one better. So we hope we'll remain the best, and unlike Roger Federer, we won't have a Rafael Nadal come along and knock us off our pitch. But meanwhile, you know, we are the best in terms of a good holistic program and framework for engineering education, and CDIO Council is very concerned to maintain that.
I think you could voice a lot of criticism of accreditation and accreditation system, but I have a role, for example, where I have to sort of project lead our walk through that, and I spend a lot of time convincing or trying to convince people that accreditors are not evil, and the system that they have devised is not the worst system in the world, although you can criticize it on many points, but I was just wondering sort of what kind of tactics or strategies you sort of employ to make say that there is at least something positive in this. What are your experiences? You mean convincing our own faculty that sectional visitation is whole?
Well, I think the external visitation is pretty close to holy evil. but sometimes, you know, it can be used as a very strong encouragement to improve your own programs. And then if you show a positive outcome, people get enthusiastic and they say, well, we're on the right track, we're doing the right things, we don't have anything to fear anymore, and we'll just maintain that momentum.
Another thing you can do, I think, is encourage your staff to get involved in the accreditation process. I mean, I said earlier, I got involved despite my reservation because I'd rather change the system from within than just argue from outside as a non-member, if you like. So I've been on accreditation panels and tried to improve them, and I think other people can do that. And I take a lovely straw in the wind for CDIO. I was invited by the civil engineers in the UK, and I'm not a civil engineer, I'm not a long way from a civil engineer. They invited me to tell them about CDIO because they kept encountering it, the phrase, and they needed briefing. This was the accrediting body for civil engineers. I went to London and I spoke to them for quite a long time about what it was about. And I regarded that as very positive. It was an accrediting body taking the trouble to inform itself about what good might be going on. So I was quite encouraging.
Comment over here.
In Portugal, the EURACE representative agency is the Professional Engineering Association, which states in the guidelines that if some program adopts the CDIO best practices and so on, then it's very in a good position to have the EURACE accreditation. So I am anxious to see when the committee visits us if they know what is CDIO. So it's very likely that some of them have heard the acronym, but they don't understand what it is. So for us, we are preparing a very small and short presentation about CDIO, because then we will be talking about the program and CDIO this and CDIO that. So it's important to explain them before, even though the association recommends. I guess that many of the accreditators will not know in depth the CDIO. So it's interesting to see if they recommend something that they don't know nothing about, and let's hope it goes okay. Just for the question about CDIO, I guess CDIO is interesting to make some neural stimulation to the teachers. So basically, you get something which takes some time to be positive and work, then it degrades, okay? And then we have to find out some new neural stimulation to shake the teachers, and okay, we have to do something and so on, because or else it will go into a routine and degrade very quickly. Okay.
Okay, thanks folks. That's the end. We've got